Hello, this is Liz Martin. I'm back today to talk about crude oil, to add to the series that we've got now about explaining the oil industry. And my background is as an oil and gas trader and a long time now teaching the world and traders and board directors about the ins and outs of trading oil and gas and LNG. So crude oil. Well, the first thing to say is that it's not the same. It's different depending where it comes from. So like wine, which is different depending on the vineyard it comes from, then oil, crude oil is different. I mean, it's largely the same. It all goes into refineries, but it's not quite the same. And we have two main ways of describing the crude oil. One, if it's sweet or sour. So literally, if you taste it, it tastes sweeter or sour. And that's because of the level of sulfur in it. So the less sulfur, the sweeter the oil is. And sweeter oils are worth more because you have to take the sulfur out of the oil to meet the specifications down the road after it's been refined before it goes into transport fuels like jet or road fuels or ship fuels. Then we determine how heavy the oil is. So you'll get light, medium, heavy oils, and you get condensates, which are very light, and extra heavy oils. And the weight matters because typically heavier oils have more heavier products within them. So things that get made into bitumen or pet coke or ship fuel, you get more of that in a heavier oil. And in a lighter oil, you'll get more chemical feedstocks and petrol blend stocks. And those are worth more. So the lighter the oil, then the more gasoline type materials it has in it, the more it's worth. And heavy oils are worth less. And different parts of the world tend to have lighter or heavier oils. For example, Canada has a lot of heavy oils, as does Venezuela, whereas America has a lot of light sweet oils, as does the North Sea. Furthermore, then there are other factors to the oil as well. So some oils will have toxins in them, so metals that aren't liked very much by refineries, or things like the acid number. So the more acidic it is, the less it's liked by refiners, and therefore the less it's worth. Now, oil refineries also like different types of oil. So some refineries are really complex and they can refine the heavy, difficult oils, and they have lots of upgrading facilities to make them into the highest value product that they can. So all refineries will have crude distillation units where they boil it up and separate it into different cuts or different levels. So light ends, things that go into LPG, into your barbecue, come off the top, or chemical feedstocks, gasolines, and then jet and diesel and heating oil, and then at the bottom end, ship fuels, and then the feedstocks for bitumen or pet coke. So they'll all have that, but after that, they've got hugely different units depending on the setup and complexity of that refinery. So the really big refineries in the US Gulf Coast are really complex, and often those quite like heavy oils, even though America tends to make light sweet oils. So when you've got that mix of different oils being made around the world and different refineries liking different types of oil, you get a lot of trade of oil around the world. So for example, in the North Sea, we make typically they're a light sweet oil. Some are a little bit heavier, some of the newer fields and some of the Norwegian fields. Now those are used within Europe, but they're also exported. China's a particular fan of 40s, which is a big North Sea field. Also, we import here a lot of US oil. We like the West Texas Intermediate oil that's exported from the US now. Now, the US is largely, or the North America is largely self-sufficient in oil and has enough to export, but it also imports oils to maximise their refineries that happen to like a heavier type of oil. So, for example, it will take Mexican Maya, which is a heavy oil, or some of the Middle Eastern barrels still go into the US. That said, broadly speaking, Europe imports oil from around the world. America is largely balanced but does import and export. And then Asia is very short, we'd say. They don't produce enough, so they have to import, and that typically comes from the Middle East or West Africa, but it's scattered all around the world where the big producers are. The main producers of crude oil are, well, it used to be Russia, Saudi and the US produced about the same, ballpark 10 million barrels a day out of a supply of around 100, talking very round numbers here. But now the US produces is more than that. Saudi clearly is producing less than that at the moment because as I'm speaking the Straits of Hormuz are closed, and Russia has produced a little less given all its issues with, well, bombing attacks on refineries and restrictions on that. In Europe, we used to rely heavily on Russian oil, but it's sanctioned now and can't come here. And so that has been flowing to India and Turkey and Russia, and China. Although recently that's been sanctioned as well. So you can't use that crude oil and then export the products back to Europe anymore. But again, with the closure of the Straits of Hormuz, that was lifted for a while, but it's due to come back into restrictions soon. We'll have to see. By the time you listen to it, we might know already if that has happened or not. So you get this global world of oil trading. Now, the price of that oil is linked mostly to Brent, for everything outside the Americas, and in the Americas, West Texas Intermediate. Now, for Brent doesn't even produce anymore, so there is no Brent crude oil, but it's a name that stuck from historically when Brent was a big field that produced up near Shetland, so it was imported there. There's still the Brent system, which is a pipeline system, and the Ninian system, which is next to it, that takes the oil into Salenvo, and then that oil is shipped out around the world. Now, the Brent is a marker grade, so much oil is priced against Brent. So if you're buying Nigerian crude oil, you buy it at mostly a premium to Brent. If you're trading some of the Middle Eastern barrels, they will into Europe, they will trade at a premium to Brent oil, and so it becomes a base price. Similarly in the US, then WTI is the base price for all the different types of oil that are made in the US and Canada. So Canada's got this very heavy oil, and it will trade at a discount to light to sweet West Texas Intermediate. There are also markers in the Middle East, so we have Oman, Dubai and Murban. So Murban is produced by the UAE, and that's a relatively recent contract that's trading now. And part of the reason the UAE didn't want to be an OPEC was so that they had free reign control how much Murban they produced, and that went through that contract, that Murban contract. Now, with Brent and WTI, behind both of them, and Murban, I should say, there are futures contracts. And the Brent one is financially settled. WTI and Murban are not, they're physically settled. So with Brent, you have a contract for 2 months' time, 3 months' time, 4 months' time, 6, 7, 8 months and years ahead, where you can buy and sell Brent crude oil prices for each delivery month. So we look at it on a month by month delivery basis. Now, because it's financially settled, doesn't mean you actually get a cargo of oil if you go and buy some on the exchange. If you just leave that purchase there, it doesn't actually turn into a physical cargo of oil. You have to trade another little instrument called exchange futures for physical, EFP, and that will convert it to a physical cargo. For Murban and WTI, it actually becomes physical oil. So for WTI, it's a pipeline, so you have to be able to physically receive that oil. For Murban, a cargo of Murban crude oil. That's the way it's set up. But the EFP keeps that relationship reasonably tight. So as little as 3 cents out to 25, although when it gets very volatile, sometimes that can get wider. And those future markets, in the old days, there used to be a pit near Tower Bridge where traders would trade all the futures contracts of oil. I remember going down there. It was a very loud, active place. Sadly, now this is all done on the exchange. So if you want to go and buy Brent crude oil futures, you go to the ICE exchange. Well, you don't go, you open the website, and obviously have to be registered, and you can click to buy your contract of Brent. So when you hear in the press the price of oil, they're talking about the first month of Brent futures. Or if you're in the US, they'll talk about the first month of WTI futures. There is many contracts that go around these now. They're options contracts and various different physical contracts around that go around with these as well, which you can ask me about if you want to know in more detail how these will work. I think that's enough for this. So I'll put my email up and you can ask me any questions you like about how crude oil trading works. Thank you. Bye.